Welcome back to The Explainer. So, when you hear the name Bruce Lee, you probably instantly picture the mesmerizing action star, right? The iconic yells, the nunchucks. But today, we're going to go beyond the movies. We are walking through his complete A to Z kung fu story to uncover the real man behind the legend. We're talking about a revolutionary thinker, a literal scientist of the human body, and a philosopher who was absolutely obsessed with breaking past limits. Let's kick things off with a philosophy that basically sets the stage for everything we're talking about today. Absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, add what is specifically your own. Now, this wasn't just some catchy slogan for him. It was the absolute core of how he lived his life. Think about it. He looked at these ancient, unquestioned martial arts traditions and had the audacity to say, I'm going to filter this through my own real-world experience. And honestly, as we'll see, that specific mindset is exactly what took him from being a rebellious kid to a global icon. So, let's rewind a bit. Born in San Francisco in 1940, his family returned to Hong Kong shortly after. And as a kid, Bruce was super energetic, pretty mischievous, and frankly, constantly getting into street fights. He was small, sure, but he was absolutely fearless. Now, his parents were obviously terrified about where this path was leading, so they pushed him into martial arts, hoping it would teach him some discipline. Little did they know that parental intervention was going to completely rewrite martial arts history. That push for discipline led a 13-year-old Bruce straight to the legendary master Ip Man. Under him, Bruce began studying Wing Chun Kung Fu. If you don't know it, Wing Chun is a Southern Chinese style heavily focused on close-range combat. It's not about brute strength at all. It's about lightning-fast punches, super efficient movements, and deflecting attacks while striking at the exact same time. Under Ip Man, Bruce learned balance, timing, and mental discipline. But here's the thing, Bruce wasn't your typical student. While others just quietly copied the master, Bruce was constantly asking questions. He demanded to know exactly why a technique worked. And regular classes just weren't enough for him. After everyone else went home, Bruce would just keep going, spending hours drilling the exact same punches, kicks, and footwork. Take the straight punch, for example. He practiced it thousands upon thousands of times until it was just unbelievably fast and powerful. It was an extreme, almost scientific obsession with mastering the basics. He actually had this incredible quote, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." That singular focus became the bedrock of everything he did next. But Bruce wasn't just practicing in a pristine, safe gym. 1950s Hong Kong was gritty. There were youth gangs, and Bruce often found himself right in the middle of actual street fights. And those raw, chaotic fights were a massive reality check. They proved that real combat is totally different from a choreographed school demonstration. He started to realize that some of these highly respected traditional moves completely failed in a real fight. His biggest takeaway? When it comes down to it, speed and simplicity are always going to beat flashy, complex moves. Fast forward to age 18, Bruce moves back to the United States, works a bunch of different jobs, and eventually starts opening his own martial arts schools. And here is where he makes a hugely controversial move. Back then, traditional schools were incredibly secretive. They basically only taught Chinese students. Well, Bruce just threw that rule completely out the window. He decided to teach anyone who was willing to put in the work, totally regardless of their background. It definitely upset traditionalists, but Bruce was showing that his loyalty was to the evolution of the art, not just blindly gatekeeping the past. Okay, so this brings us to what I consider the real turning point, the inciting incident of his true evolution. Bruce gets into a highly publicized challenge fight against another martial artist named Wong Jackman. Now, Bruce won the fight, but here's a really fascinating question. Why was he totally disappointed afterward? I mean, most of us would be celebrating a win like that, right? But Bruce was actually really upset. Well, he was upset because the fight took way longer than he thought it should have. He realized that even though he won, the traditional training system he was using was actually holding him back. It was too limiting. So instead of throwing a party, he immediately went to work ruthlessly analyzing his own weaknesses. Think about how rare that is. Most of us just ignore our flaws when we win. But for Bruce, that intense self-criticism was his superpower. It's what forced him to break past those traditional boundaries. To fix those limitations, Bruce just started devouring knowledge from literally everywhere. We're talking Western boxing, fencing, wrestling, judo, karate, and even modern physical conditioning. He stepped back and asked a genuinely radical question that kind of shook the martial arts world. Why be limited by one style? Seriously, why trap yourself inside one specific set of rules when an actual real-world fight has zero rules? His answer to that massive question was his own unique creation, Jeet Kune, which translates to the way of the intercepting fist. But it is absolutely crucial to understand that JKD was not just another fighting style. He wasn't trying to create a new rigid system with a new set of rules to trap people in. It was a fluid philosophy. It was an entirely new way of thinking about combat and self-expression. So let's look at the core principles of Jeet Kune Do. They are amazingly simple on paper, but incredibly tough to master in practice. Use what works, discard what doesn't, adapt to any situation, and be fluid like water. He was essentially telling his students to completely throw out centuries-old dogma in favor of absolute adaptability. If a technique from fencing closed the distance faster than a traditional kung fu stance, guess what? You use the fencing technique, no hesitation. This entire philosophy is summed up in what is undoubtedly his most famous quote, "Be water, my friend." Water doesn't have a shape. If you pour it into a cup, it becomes the cup. It can flow gently or it can crash with unbelievable force. What he meant was that you have to adapt seamlessly to whatever is happening around you, rather than being rigid and trying to force some pre-planned strategy into a chaotic situation. It's such a beautiful evolution from his early, rigid drilling of those 10,000 kicks. Now, to actually achieve that level of fluidity and explosive power, Bruce had to treat self-improvement like a strict science. His daily routine was just punishing. He was doing intense strength and core training, running miles, cycling, jumping rope, and then doing constant martial arts practice, sparring, heavy bags, reflex drills. And we can't forget the mental training. He spent hours reading philosophy, meditating, and visualizing. He kept these incredibly detailed notebooks tracking his workouts, nutrition, techniques, everything. He was literally an elite athlete and a scholar rolled into one person. And you can see how all that scientific preparation translated into the real world with the legendary one-inch punch. From basically an inch away, Bruce could generate enough force to send a grown man flying backward. Honestly, to the untrained eye, it looked like absolute magic. But it wasn't magic. It was pure physics. It was the perfect, exact synchronization of body mechanics, timing, structural alignment, and explosive force, all firing at once. So Bruce naturally wanted to share this highly developed, authentic martial art with the entire world, and film was the perfect explosive vehicle for it. He rocketed to global superstardom through absolute classics like The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, Way of the Dragon, and of course, Enter the Dragon. It's crazy to think about, but before Bruce Lee, huge parts of the world knew basically nothing about Kung Fu. He single-handedly turned martial arts into a massive global phenomenon. And I think this brings us to exactly what made him such a historic disruptor. It really comes down to a fundamental shift in perspective. At the time, most traditional martial artists were looking at their art and asking, how do I preserve this tradition exactly as it is? But Bruce Lee, he looked at himself and asked, how do I improve? That one simple shift in mindset changed the trajectory of martial arts forever. But tragically, the world lost this brilliant mind way, way too soon. On July 20, 1973, Bruce Lee passed away suddenly in Hong Kong. He was only 32 years old. The news absolutely stunned the world. And while there were plenty of rumors and mysteries surrounding his passing over the years, what really matters is that his legacy very quickly outgrew the tragedy of his death. Today, his impact is just monumental. Bruce Lee is widely considered the father of modern mixed martial arts concepts. He remains the ultimate global icon of discipline and self-belief. And he was a true pioneer who bridged the gap between Eastern and Western philosophies. Honestly, you can walk into pretty much any gym today, and you'll find fighters, coaches, and everyday people still relying heavily on his methods and his timeless philosophy. A rebellious kid from Hong Kong learned Wing Chun, tested it on the harsh streets, challenged centuries of tradition, created his own fluid philosophy, and went on to inspire millions. He proved that the ultimate goal isn't perfection, but constant, endless adaptation and improvement. So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final thought to apply to your own life. In a world full of rigid traditions and fixed expectations, how can you be water? Think on that. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.